The snow wouldn't stop falling. From the top floor of her glass tower in Chicago, Audrey Kane watched her empire collapse in real time. Headlines burned across every screen. Assets frozen. Federal investigations launched. Investors vanished. Just moments earlier, she had been the youngest self-made billionaire in the Midwest. Now she was branded a fraud. The board forced her out before the markets opened in Asia. As she stepped into the silent marble lobby, heels slipping on melting snow, the last person she expected to catch her was the night janitor. And that was the moment everything changed. The screens in the boardroom had been relentless. Her own face stared back at her from a dozen monitors, framed by words that felt like ice picks to the chest. Tech mogul under investigation. Kane Technologies, stock plummets. Billions evaporate overnight. Audrey stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching snow swirl 40 stories above Michigan Avenue. The flakes looked like static, like her entire world was breaking down into pixels and disappearing. Behind her, the board members she had handpicked were taking turns explaining why she had to go immediately. "The optics are catastrophic," Douglas Lang said, his voice hollow. She had made him wealthy. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "Shareholders are demanding action," added Lauren Hayes, the CFO, who had once called Audrey a visionary. Audrey's phone buzzed against the glass table. Dozens of missed calls. Her attorney, her publicist, her mother. She ignored them all. Outside, Chicago was turning into a snow globe, beautiful and suffocating. The January wind howled through some invisible gap in the architecture, a high-pitched whistle that sounded like the building itself was screaming. "We need your resignation letter right away," Douglas said. "Security will escort you out." She had built this company from a dorm room idea. Years of 18-hour days, multiple successful pivots, numerous acquisitions. A former president had quoted her at a tech summit. And now, because of trading irregularities she didn't authorize and transactions she didn't approve, they wanted her gone. Audrey turned from the window. The boardroom felt smaller than it had that morning. The walls were closing in. Or maybe she was shrinking. For the first time in her adult life, she had no plan, no strategy, no move to make. "I'll be out shortly," she said quietly. No one argued. No one defended her. They had already moved on to damage control, discussing press releases and interim leadership. She was a problem being managed, not a person being supported. Audrey gathered her tablet and walked out without another word. The executive floor was empty. Everyone had gone home early, afraid of association. Her assistant's desk was cleared. The motivational posters she had hung, "Fail fast, learn faster," now felt like cruel jokes. Her corner office looked staged, impersonal, like a museum exhibit of someone else's life. Audrey didn't pack anything. What was the point? The life those objects represented no longer existed. She grabbed her coat and walked to the elevator. The descent to the lobby felt longer than it should have. Her ears popped. Her reflection in the polished steel doors showed a woman she barely recognized. Hair perfect, suit immaculate, eyes completely hollow. The elevator chimed. The doors opened onto the grand marble lobby she had designed herself. Minimalist, powerful, cold. The floor was slick with melted snow, tracked in by the last employees leaving for the night. Audrey stepped out carefully, but her heel caught a patch of water and she felt herself tilting, falling, the ground rushing up to meet her. A hand caught her elbow, firm, steady. She looked up into the face of a man in a gray maintenance uniform, a mop bucket on wheels beside him. "Easy there," he said. Audrey straightened, pulling her arm back instinctively. "I'm fine." The janitor didn't argue. He just held her gaze for a moment. Not with pity, not with judgment, just acknowledgement. Then he went back to mopping, pushing the water toward a drain in deliberate, practiced strokes. She should have walked away, called her driver, disappeared into the storm. But something about that moment, the steadiness of his hands, the quiet competence, the complete absence of recognition in his eyes, made her stop. Through the glass walls, she could see the snow coming down harder. The streets were empty. The city looked abandoned, frozen in place. And for the first time that day, Audrey Kane felt the full weight of what had just happened. She had nowhere to go. Reid Harlan had been cleaning office buildings for years. He knew the rhythm of corporate crisis. The hurried exits, the boxes carried out after hours, the way executives stopped seeing service workers entirely when their worlds were falling apart. He had expected this woman to brush past him, phone pressed to her ear, already moving on to whatever came next. Instead, she just stood there. He kept mopping, giving her space. The TV mounted in the lobby was playing the news with the sound off. He could see her face on the screen, split with another shot of federal agents entering a building. The chyron read, "Disgraced CEO forced out." "Headlines aren't always the truth," Reid said, wringing out his mop. Audrey's head snapped toward him. Her expression shifted from blank shock to something sharper. "Excuse me? The news, they're already calling you guilty. Haven't even investigated yet." "You wouldn't understand," she said, her voice cold, controlled, the voice of someone used to ending conversations. Reid shrugged, pushing the bucket toward the next section of floor. "Maybe not billions, but I understand losing everything." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. The lobby fell quiet, except for the sound of water sloshing and the distant howl of wind. Audrey stood frozen, her expensive coat buttoned to her throat, her breath visible in the drafty space. "It's going to be a bad one tonight," Reid continued, nodding toward the windows. "They're saying heavy accumulation by morning. Roads are already a mess." "I don't care about the weather. You will when you try to get home." Audrey pulled out her phone. No signal. The storm must be interfering with the tower. She walked toward the front doors, heels clicking sharply on marble, and pushed outside into the blast of snow and wind. It hit her like a physical force, stealing her breath. The cold was shocking, painful. She retreated back inside, snow dusting her shoulders. Reid had moved to the security desk, wiping down the granite counter. "Like I said, bad one. My driver probably turned around. Smart people aren't on the roads right now." Audrey felt something crack inside her chest, the last thread of control she had been holding. She walked to one of the modernist benches, more art installation than furniture, and sat down heavily. The marble was cold, even through her wool coat. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Reid worked methodically, moving through his routine with practiced efficiency. Audrey watched him in her peripheral vision. He was probably in his late 30s or early 40s, lean build. There was something deliberate about the way he moved, like a man who had learned to waste no motion. The TV screen changed to a financial analyst explaining the collapse. Audrey watched her life being dissected by strangers. They were talking about her like she wasn't a person, just a data point in a market correction. She saw her own face flash again, a photo from last year's shareholders' meeting where she had been laughing at something the CFO said. She looked confident, untouchable. That woman felt like a stranger now. "They can't hurt you worse than you're already hurt," Reid said quietly, not looking up from his work. "You have no idea what they can do." "True, but I know what you can survive." He paused, then added, "Most people think rock bottom is the end. It's not. It's just the first day of something different." Audrey turned to look at him directly for the first time. Really look. There were lines around his eyes, the kind that came from stress, not age. His hands were rough, scarred, but his voice was educated, his phrasing too precise for the job he was doing. "Who are you?" she asked. "Reid Harlan, night maintenance." He offered a slight smile. "And before you ask, yeah, I know who you are, but that's not why I'm talking to you." "Then why?" "Because a few years earlier I was sitting where you're sitting. Different building, same look on my face. And someone told me something I didn't want to hear." He met her eyes. "You're still here. That means something." The simple observation hit harder than any of the board's accusations. Audrey felt her throat tighten. She looked away, back toward the storm, blinking hard. "What did they tell you?" she asked quietly. Reid finished wiping the desk and leaned against it, arms crossed. "They told me my son didn't care what I lost. He cared that I showed up." Audrey nodded slowly, not trusting herself to speak. Outside, the wind drove snow against the glass in waves, making the entire lobby feel like it was underwater. Somewhere in the building, a pipe creaked. The storm was settling in for the night. And so, apparently, was she. Reid pulled a folding chair from the security closet and set it across from the bench where Audrey sat. He lowered himself into it with a slight wince, lower back. The building's heating system hummed in the background, fighting a losing battle against the cold seeping through the glass walls. "You don't have to tell me anything," Audrey said. I don't need a pep talk." "Good. I wasn't planning on giving one." Reid leaned back, the chair creaking under his weight. "But we're both stuck here until this storm passes. Might as well talk." Audrey considered leaving, finding somewhere else to wait. But the lobby was warm, and the idea of going back out into that wind made her bones ache. She pulled her coat tighter. "A few years earlier," Reid began, his voice steady and matter-of-fact, "I had a different life. Mechanical engineering degree from Illinois Tech. Good job at an aerospace firm. Wife named Sarah. We had just found out she was pregnant." He paused, looking past Audrey toward the windows, but his eyes were seeing something else entirely. One winter evening, she was driving home from her parents' place. Black ice on the Kennedy Expressway. SUV lost control. Crossed the median. He said it the way someone recites facts they have repeated too many times to feel anymore. She was 8 months pregnant. They did an emergency cesarean. Baby was fine. Sarah didn't make it. Audrey felt the air leave her lungs. "I'm sorry." "Yeah, me too." Reid rubbed his jaw, a gesture that seemed automatic. Hospital bills came first, even with insurance. The NICU stay, the surgery, the funeral, it added up fast. Then I found out Sarah had co-signed for her brother's business loan. He defaulted. I was liable. Lost the house in months. You couldn't fight it. Could have. Didn't have the energy. I had a very young baby who wouldn't stop crying, and a job I couldn't focus on. Made mistakes. Got let go. By early the next year, I was sleeping in my car with my son in a parking garage, running the engine for heat in short intervals so we didn't freeze. Audrey had thought she understood loss, the collapse of her company, the betrayal of her board, the destruction of her reputation. But this was different. This was a man who had lost everything that actually mattered. "How did you—" she started, then stopped, unsure what she was even asking. "Survive," Reid replied. "Honestly, most days I didn't think I would, but every morning I'd look at my son Finn, and he'd smile at me. Didn't matter that we were homeless. Didn't matter that I was washing him with bottled water in a gas station bathroom. He just cared that I was there." He stood, walked to the window, his reflection ghost-like against the falling snow. "Eventually I found a shelter that took fathers with kids. Got stable. Took this job because the hours let me be with Finn during the day. Found daycare that opened early. Started rebuilding. He turned back to Audrey. But here's what I learned. You can lose your job, your house, your savings, your reputation, all of it. And you're still you. The skills that got you there the first time don't disappear. They're just frozen, waiting for you to thaw them out. Audrey absorbed this in silence. The comparison was humbling. She had lost her company, her money, her status. But she hadn't lost a person. She hadn't lost what this man had lost. And yet he was standing here, working a night shift, raising a son, functioning, while she was falling apart over money and reputation. Your son, she said. How old is he now? 3.5. Smart as hell, obsessed with trains. Reid's whole demeanor changed when he talked about Finn. His shoulders relaxed. His voice softened. He doesn't know what I used to be. To him, I'm just Dad, the guy who makes grilled cheese and does train sounds. Do you regret it? Losing your career? Reid considered this. Some days. Yeah. I love that work. Designing components, solving problems. But I got something else instead. Time with my kid that most fathers miss. He knows me. Really knows me. That's not nothing. Audrey stood and joined him at the window. The city beyond was barely visible now. Just white sheets of snow and the occasional blur of headlights moving at walking speed. She caught sight of her own reflection. Designer coat, pearls, perfect hair. She looked like a woman playing dress-up as someone important. They can freeze your accounts, Reid said quietly, still looking at the storm. They can freeze your stock, your assets, your access. But they can't freeze your skills. What's in your head, what you know how to build. That's yours. No court order can touch it. Audrey turned to look at him. That's the second time you've referenced freezing. The weather metaphor is a bit heavy-handed. For the first time, Reid laughed. Yeah, all right. But it's true. Winter doesn't last forever. This storm will pass. Your storm will too. Question is what you do while you're in it. She wanted to argue, to tell him it was different, that he didn't understand the complexity of her situation, the legal ramifications, the federal investigation. But standing there in the empty lobby with snow piling against the doors, those differences felt smaller than they had an hour ago. I don't know how to be anything except a CEO, Audrey admitted. Then I guess you're about to find out who you are underneath the title. Audrey walked back to the bench and sat down, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the board meeting was gone, leaving only a hollow ache. She pulled out her phone. Still no signal. Good. She didn't want to talk to anyone anyway. If I'm not a CEO, she said, more to herself than Reid, who am I? Reid dragged his chair closer and sat back down. That's the question, isn't it? Took me a year to figure out I wasn't an engineer anymore. Had to become something else. Father, night worker, guy who knows which diaper brand doesn't leak at 3 a.m. He smiled slightly. Not glamorous, but real. Audrey's phone buzzed, a notification finally breaking through. She glanced at it. Her bank had sent an automated message. Your account access has been restricted pending investigation. She stared at the words until they blurred. They froze it, she said flatly. Expected that intellectually, but seeing it is different. She opened her banking app. Read error messages across every account. Checking, savings, investment portfolios, even her personal credit cards. All locked. I have $200 in my wallet. That's it. That's all I can access. 200 is more than I had. I had 37 and a baby. The comparison should have felt dismissive, but somehow it grounded her. Audrey set her phone face down on the bench. My attorney is going to call. My publicist. My investors. They're all going to want answers I don't have. Then don't answer. Not tonight. That's not how this works. Tonight it is. Tonight you just sit with it. Feel it. Tomorrow you start figuring out the next move. Reid leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You know what the worst part was for me? Not the money. Not the house. It was looking in the mirror and not recognizing myself. I was Reid the engineer, Reid the husband. Suddenly, I was just Reid, the guy in a shelter. Took me months to realize I'd been confusing my roles with my identity. Audrey understood that more than she wanted to admit. She had been Audrey Kane, tech founder. Audrey Kane, Forbes cover. Audrey Kane, youngest female billionaire. Strip those away, and what was left? She genuinely didn't know. I built that company from nothing, she said. Dorm room, student loans, 80-hour weeks. It was my whole 20s. I missed weddings, funerals, my sister's graduation, all for this. And now they're saying I'm a fraud. Are you? Then prove it. But not tonight. Tonight you just survive. The simplicity of that directive was almost offensive. Audrey had spent years playing three-dimensional chess with investors and competitors and market forces. Survival felt too basic, too primitive. But maybe that was the point. Maybe she had been playing the wrong game. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from her mother. Just saw the news. Are you safe? Call me. Audrey typed back, I'm fine, and put the phone away. She wasn't fine, but she was safe. That was something. Your friends, Reid said, the ones you made while rich, they reaching out. Audrey laughed, a bitter sound. I've had dozens of calls. You want to guess how many were from people asking if I was okay versus people asking how to protect their investments? None to one, 0 to dozens. Reid nodded like this confirmed something he already knew. Yeah, that's the thing about building an empire. You collect people who love the empire. When it falls, they scatter. But the people who stay, if anyone stays, those are the ones who actually knew you. No one's staying. I'm here. You're paid to be here. I'm paid to mop floors. I'm talking to you for free. He stood and walked to his supply closet, returning with 2 bottles of water and a vending machine granola bar. He handed them to Audrey. Dinner on the house. She accepted them, because refusing felt petty. The granola bar was stale. The water room temperature. It was the most honest meal she had had in years. No wine pairing, no Michelin stars, no servers calling her Miss Kane. Just food, just survival. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm. The wind had a rhythm to it, building and releasing like breath. Audrey ate slowly, tasting nothing, just chewing and swallowing because her body needed fuel. What do I do tomorrow? She asked eventually. Wake up. After that, whatever comes next. 1 hour at a time. You can't plan your comeback when you're still in the collapse. First you just stop falling. Audrey looked at him. This janitor in a maintenance uniform who somehow understood her situation better than any of her high-powered contacts. Why are you helping me? Reid thought about it. Because years earlier a woman named Denise at the shelter didn't have to give me extra time with Finn during visiting hours. She didn't have to let me use the office phone to call potential employers. She just did. Said she'd been where I was. Different circumstances. Same feeling. I told her I'd pay it forward. He met Audrey's eyes. This is me paying it forward. I'm not sure I deserve it. Probably not. But I didn't either. That's how grace works. It shows up when you need it, not when you've earned it. Outside, a snowplow rumbled past. its yellow lights flashing weakly through the whiteout. The blade scraped against asphalt, a harsh metallic sound that echoed in the empty street. Audrey watched it disappear into the storm, pushing snow aside that would be replaced within minutes. Sisyphean work. Pointless. She understood it completely. "I'm scared," she said quietly. "Good means you're still alive." Reid's phone alarm went off. Time for his scheduled security sweep of the upper floors. He silenced it and glanced at Audrey, who was staring at the news ticker running across the bottom of the TV screen. More headlines about her. Speculation about criminal charges. Market impact projections. "I need to do my rounds," he said. "You're welcome to stay here. Heat's on. Bathrooms on the second floor if you need them." Audrey stood. "I'll come with you. I can't look at that screen anymore." They took the elevator to the 10th floor. The executive level had been sealed off by security, so Reid worked his way down from the top accessible floor. He moved through each space, methodically checking windows, adjusting thermostats, emptying trash bins that were already mostly empty. Audrey followed, her heels clicking on the tile, echoing in the vacant offices. "You're very systematic," she observed. "Engineering training. Process matters. You said you went to Illinois Tech. What was your focus?" "Aerospace structural analysis. Stress calculations. Failure point predictions. Basically figuring out how much force something can take before it breaks." Audrey stopped walking. "That's not a janitor's background." "No, but it's a janitor's current reality." Reid finished checking an office and moved to the next. "Knowledge doesn't disappear just because you're not using it. I still think like an engineer. I just apply it to different problems now." "Like what?" He gestured around the floor. "Building systems, heating efficiency, water pressure issues. Last month I diagnosed a ventilation problem that the maintenance company had been chasing for weeks. Saved the property manager thousands." "Did they pay you for that?" "Gave me a gift card to Starbucks." Audrey felt a flash of anger on his behalf. "That's insulting. You saved them thousands." Reid shrugged. "Wasn't doing it for money. Did it because the problem bothered me. That's the thing about being an engineer. You see systems, you see inefficiencies, you can't help but want to fix them." They continued through the floor. Audrey found herself watching how Reid worked. The economy of motion, the attention to detail, the quiet competence. It reminded her of her own early days, coding, lost in problems that only she seemed to see. "Can I ask you something?" Reid said, emptying a recycling bin. "Sure." "This company, this collapse, you really didn't see it coming?" Audrey bristled automatically, then stopped herself. The question wasn't accusatory, it was analytical. "No. The trading irregularities started weeks ago. Small enough that our compliance team flagged them, but didn't escalate. Then they accelerated. By the time I saw the pattern, the SEC was already investigating." "But you're the CEO. Doesn't everything flow through you?" "Should. But when you have thousands of employees across multiple countries, you have to delegate. I had a CFO, a compliance officer, a trading desk full of people I trusted." She paused. "I was wrong to trust them." Reid pushed his cart to the next office suite. "Or you were right to trust them. And someone betrayed that trust. There's a difference. The end result is the same, maybe. But the recovery is different. If you failed, you learn from failure. If you were betrayed, you learn to build better systems." He looked at her. "Which one is it?" Audrey thought about the timeline, the unusual trading patterns, the timing of the investigation, the speed with which the board had turned on her. "I think I was set up." "That's a big claim." "I know, but look at it systemically. Someone had to initiate those trades. Someone had to time them, precisely to trigger SAEC attention. Someone had to ensure the board learned about it before I could investigate internally. She felt her mind engaging finally after hours of shutdown. Reid nodded slowly. So the question becomes, who benefits? Exactly. They reached the end of the hallway. Through the window, the city was invisible under the storm, but in the reflection, Audrey could see herself standing straighter, eyes sharper. The shock was wearing off. The engineer in Reid had activated the builder in her. I need to see the trading data, she said. Don't you have access? Had. Past tense. But I backed everything up to a private server. It's at my apartment. The apartment you can't get to because of the storm, right? Audrey pulled out her phone. Still no signal. And even if I could, they might have frozen access to my devices by now. Reid wheeled his cart toward the elevator. What if you didn't need your device? What if you just needed the data architecture? Could you reconstruct the pattern from memory? Maybe parts of it. But I'd need something to write on. Something to chart the timeline. They rode the elevator back down to the lobby. Reid pushed his cart to the security desk and pulled out a rolling whiteboard from the storage closet, the kind used for presentations. He found a box of dry erase markers and handed them to Audrey. Not exactly high-tech, he said. But it's something. Audrey took the markers. She stared at the blank board. For the first time in hours, she felt something other than despair. She felt purpose. All right, she said. Let's figure out who destroyed my company. They worked on the floor. The whiteboard wasn't tall enough to stand at, so Reid lowered it to ground level. Audrey sat cross-legged on the marble, her designer coat shed and draped over the bench. Working in her silk blouse and wool slacks, she started sketching a timeline. The first irregular trade was early January, she said, writing the date. A block sale of company stock, millions of shares below market value. Who authorized it? According to the system, I did, but I was in Tokyo that day. Signed approval remotely. Reid sat across from her, legs crossed, watching her work. Digital signature, yes, which means someone either had my password or spoofed my credentials. Your CFO would have those credentials. Lauren Hayes, maybe, but she'd also know the forensics would trace back to her immediately. Audrey drew a second line. Another block sale. Same pattern. I was in London, signed remotely. So someone knew your travel schedule. Everyone knew my travel schedule. It was public. Investor meetings, conferences. I was out of the country many days that month. Reid leaned forward. But not everyone knew which days you'd be approving transactions remotely versus in person. Audrey stopped writing. That's internal information. Finance team would know, executive assistants. Maybe. She started listing names. Lauren Hayes, CFO. Nathan Brooks, Chief Compliance Officer. 3 executive assistants. The head of IT security. 8 people total, all of whom she had trusted completely. Any of them have motive? Reid asked. Define motive. Money. They were all well compensated. Power. They already had significant authority. What about outside the company? Who benefits if Kane Technologies collapses? Audrey sat back thinking. Competitors. We were dominating 3 major markets. Cloud infrastructure, AI development platforms, enterprise security. A dozen companies would benefit if we went under. Could they get to someone inside your organization with enough money? Probably. Reid stood and walked to the windows, hands in his pockets. The snow was still coming down, maybe even harder than before. The streets were buried under drifts that reached the parking meters. Here's what I don't get. If someone wanted to destroy you, why not just embezzle? Why set up this elaborate trading scheme? Because embezzlement can be isolated. One bad actor contained damage. But market manipulation, trading irregularities, that implicates the entire leadership structure. It forces a complete teardown, which means whoever did this didn't just want to steal, they wanted to destroy. Audrey felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Personal vendetta or business elimination. Hostile takeover. She stood and grabbed her phone, frustrated again by the lack of signal. I need to see who's been buying our stock during the collapse. If someone's accumulating shares while the price tanks, they'd have controlling interest for pennies on the dollar. Exactly. Reid walked back to the whiteboard. He picked up a marker and drew a flowchart. Boxes and arrows showing potential paths from initial trade to board removal to stock acquisition. His hand moved with practiced confidence, the kind that came from years of drafting and diagramming. Within minutes, he had created a structural map of a corporate coup. Your CFO reports to the board, he said, tapping the marker on Lauren's name. If she's compromised, who on the board would know? The audit committee. Douglas Lang chairs it. Same Douglas who led the charge to force you out tonight. Audrey felt something click into place. He pushed hardest, wanted me gone immediately. Didn't want to wait for investigation results because investigation results might clear me. Reid drew another arrow. If Douglas is part of this, he'd want you removed before you could defend yourself. Once you're out, the narrative becomes disgraced, CEO, and any defense you mount sounds like desperation. But Douglas has been with me from the start, Series A investor. He believed in the company when no one else did. People change, or maybe he didn't change. Maybe he was always planning this. Patient predator. Wait until the company is valuable enough, then take it. Audrey looked at the diagram Reid had drawn. It was frighteningly plausible. A long con years in the making. She had been so focused on building, on growing, on innovating, that she had never considered someone might be building a trap around her. I sound paranoid, she said. You sound analytical. There's a difference. She sat back down on the floor, suddenly exhausted again. The brief surge of purpose was fading, replaced by the overwhelming scale of what she would be up against. Even if I'm right, how do I prove it? They have the company, the resources, the lawyers. I have a whiteboard and $200. Reid sat down across from her. You also have expertise they don't know you'll use. They think you're broken and hiding, probably drunk in some hotel room. They're not expecting you to fight back. I'm not sure I have the energy to fight back. You do. You just used the last hour building a case. That's not the behavior of someone who's given up. Audrey looked at the whiteboard, at the timeline and names and arrows. It looked like the kind of investigative work she used to do in the early days, piecing together market opportunities, finding patterns in chaos. She had forgotten she could think like this. Somewhere in the rise to billionaire, she had delegated the details to others and lost touch with the fundamentals. Help me, she said quietly. Reid met her eyes. What? Help me investigate this. You see patterns. You think structurally. I need that. I'm a janitor, Audrey. I push a mop. I'm not a forensic analyst. You are an aerospace engineer who analyzes structural failures. This is the same thing, just applied to corporate structure instead of airplane wings. Please. Reid was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. The building creaked. Finally, he extended his hand. Okay, but I'm not doing this for you. Then who? For every person who ever got destroyed by someone more powerful and didn't have the resources to fight back. For my wife who died while her brother's creditors came after me. For everyone who got screwed by a system that protects the people at the top. He held her gaze. I'm doing this because I want to see the powerful held accountable for once. Audrey took his hand and shook it. His grip was firm, calloused, real. They had an alliance. Unlikely, unequal, unstoppable. They worked through the night. Reid set a phone timer for his rounds. He still had a job to do, and between sweeps of the building, they reconstructed Audrey's last several months. She talked through every major decision, every board meeting, every transaction she could remember. Reid took notes on cleaning supplies, inventory sheets, the only paper available, organizing information into categories. Later, Audrey's phone finally regained signal. It immediately exploded with notifications. Texts, voicemails, emails. She scrolled through them with growing detachment. Anything useful? Reid asked, returning from a floor check. My lawyer wants a large retainer. My publicist wants to schedule a crisis management session at an exorbitant hourly rate. My accountant says the IRS is freezing additional assets. She set the phone down. Everyone wants money. I don't have to solve problems I didn't create. What about friends? Real ones. Audrey scrolled through her contacts. Hundreds of names. Business contacts, investors, conference connections. She couldn't remember the last time she had called someone just to talk. The last time someone had called her for a reason other than business. I don't think I have friends, she admitted. I have networks. Networks fail. Friends don't. Easy to say when you have them. Reid pulled out his own phone and showed her his contacts. Maybe 30 names. His son's daycare. The guy at the corner store who let him buy diapers on credit when he was short. The woman at the shelter who still checked in on Finn. The maintenance supervisor who gave him this job. That's my network. Small but real. Yeah. Audrey felt something twist in her chest. Envy maybe, or grief for something she had never built. She had been so focused on professional connections that she had forgotten to build personal ones. And now, in her moment of crisis, she was utterly alone. Reid must have seen it on her face. Hey, you're building one right now. Networks start with one person. Right here. Whiteboard and bad coffee and a snowstorm. This is how it begins. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They returned to the investigation. Reid had found an old laptop in the lost and found, unclaimed for months, which meant it was technically salvage. He booted it up. Basic model, slow but functional. Audrey logged into a backup email account she had created years ago and rarely used. From there, she accessed a document storage system the investigators probably didn't know about. I've got financial statements, she said, downloading files. They spread papers across the lobby floor, creating a timeline of trades, board meetings, and stock movements. Reid cross-referenced dates with Audrey's travel calendar. A pattern emerged. Every suspicious trade had been authorized while Audrey was out of the country, always on days when she had scheduled calls with the CFO. Lauren knew exactly when you'd be signing documents remotely, Reid said. She probably sent you legitimate approvals mixed with fraudulent ones. You're reviewing dozens of documents at midnight after a long flight. You're not going to catch one fake transaction. But my digital signature should require two-factor authentication. Unless someone in IT disabled it for efficiency. Happens all the time in corporations. Security versus convenience. Convenience usually wins. Audrey pulled up her IT request history. There, a ticket filed by Lauren Hayes requesting streamlined approval processes for executive transactions, approved by Nathan Brooks, the chief compliance officer. They coordinated this. She said. Looks like it. But why? What's their endgame? Audrey kept digging. She found board meeting minutes from a closed session she hadn't been invited to. The topic: leadership succession planning. Her stomach dropped. They were planning this before the trades even started. They were building a case for my removal. Reid read over her shoulder. Based on what? Erratic behavior, poor judgment, emotional instability. Audrey felt rage building. They manufactured evidence. Every decision I made that they questioned. Every strategic pivot they disagreed with. They documented it all as proof of incompetence, while simultaneously undermining me with fraudulent trades. A two-pronged attack. Destroy my credibility internally with the board. Destroy the company's value externally with market manipulation. By the time it all came together, I had no defense. She kept scrolling through documents. Then she found it. A stock purchase agreement dated weeks earlier. Douglas Lang and Lauren Hayes, along with 3 other board members, had formed an investment group. They had secured a credit line from a hedge fund, billions, to acquire Kane Technologies stock in the event of a market disruption. They're buying the company, Audrey whispered. They tanked the stock price, forced me out, and now they're buying controlling interest for a fraction of what it's worth. Reid let out a low whistle. That's not just fraud. That's corporate piracy. Audrey felt lightheaded. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. People she had made wealthy, people she had trusted, people she had considered mentors. They had been planning her destruction for months, maybe years, and she had never seen it coming. I need to report this to the SEC. She said. With what evidence? Documents you accessed from the personal backup that they'll claim you fabricated. You're already under investigation. This could look like you're deflecting. Then what do I do? Reid stood and walked to the window. Dawn was approaching, though the sky was still black with storm clouds. You need someone with credibility to verify this independently. Someone who can't be accused of being in your pocket. Like who? Like a forensic accountant who doesn't work for any party involved, or a cybersecurity firm that can trace the digital signatures and prove they were spoofed. Someone neutral. That costs money I don't have and time I definitely don't have. They're probably moving to finalize the purchase right now. Reid turned back to her. Then we need to make noise, loud enough that someone with authority pays attention before it's too late. The media. Risky. They've already painted me as guilty. Going to them now could backfire. Audrey felt the walls closing in again. Every path forward seemed blocked. She had evidence but no credibility. She had truth but no platform. She had rage but no power. And then she remembered something. A card in her wallet. A woman she had met at a conference months earlier. Sarah Brennan, investigative journalist for the Chicago Tribune. They had talked about corporate accountability, about the way white-collar crime got buried in complexity. Sarah had said, "If you ever see something that needs exposing, call me." Audrey had kept the card because Sarah had been real, unimpressed by wealth or status. At the time she had thought she would never need it. Now it might be her only option. She pulled out her wallet and found the card. You trust her? I trust that she wants the truth. And right now that's the best I've got. Audrey pulled out her phone and drafted an email. She attached the stock purchase agreement, the IT request timeline, the board minutes. She wrote a single line. They destroyed my company to steal it. I have proof. Will you investigate? She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Now what? Reid asked. Now we wait for dawn. The snow stopped as morning arrived. Audrey knew because she had been watching the clock on the lobby wall, watching each minute pass with excruciating slowness. The silence, when the wind finally died, was startling. After hours of howling, the sudden stillness felt unnatural. Reid had finished his shift, but stayed. They had moved from the floor to the benches, backs against the cold marble. Papers and notes spread around them, like debris from a shipwreck. Audrey's phone was low on battery. She turned off everything except email, waiting for Sarah Brennan to respond. "You should go home," Audrey said. "Daycare doesn't open until later. Finn is with my neighbor until then. I've got time." "Your neighbor watches him all night?" "She's a nurse, works nights. I watch her daughter after school. We trade off." Audrey thought about the complexity of that arrangement, the trust required, the mutual dependence. It was so far from her experience of hiring full-time nannies and household staff that it might as well have been a foreign country. That sounds hard. It's efficient, and her daughter and Finn are good together. They're building a network. He smiled slightly. Starts young. Through the windows, the city was emerging from the whiteout. The snow had stopped, but what it left behind was staggering. Drifts reached halfway up parked cars. The street was invisible under a smooth blanket of white. A few early plows were out, blades scraping, but it would be hours before the roads were passable. Audrey's phone buzzed. Email notification. She grabbed it. Sarah Brennan. "Holy..." "I'm looking at this now. Can you verify authenticity of these documents? Need on-record confirmation before I run anything. Call me." Audrey stood, suddenly energized. She responded. "What did she say?" Reid asked. "She wants verification. She's interested." Reid stood too. "That's good. That's a start." Audrey dialed the number on Sarah's card. It rang 3 times, then connected. "This is Sarah. It's Audrey Kane. You got my email." "I did. And if these documents are authentic, this is one of the biggest corporate fraud stories I've ever seen. But I need to verify. Can you give me access to the original files? They're on a secure server. I can grant you temporary access, but you'd need to move fast. Once they realize I'm investigating back, they'll lock everything down." "Send me the credentials. I'll have our tech team pull everything within the hour. But Audrey, I need you to understand. If this goes to print, you're going to be in the center of a firestorm. Federal investigations, lawsuits, media circus. Are you prepared for that?" Audrey looked at Reid. He nodded. "I'm already in a firestorm," she said. "Might as well be the one who started it." "Okay, send me everything you have. I'm calling my editor now." The call ended. Audrey sent the server credentials and her access passwords. She was burning her last bridge, but bridges to nowhere weren't worth preserving. "Now we really wait," Reid said. The sun started to rise, not a dramatic sunrise. The sky just gradually shifted from black to gray to pale blue. But the light on the snow was blinding, turning the city into a landscape of diamonds. Audrey walked to the window and pressed her hand against the glass. It was cold enough to sting. Behind her, Reid's phone rang. He answered, spoke quietly, then hung up. "I need to go get Finn," he said. "Are you going to be okay here?" "I don't know where else to go. My apartment is blocks away. The roads aren't clear. You could come with me. It's not far. Walking distance." Audrey hesitated. The idea of meeting his son, of intruding on his real life, felt like crossing a line. But staying alone in this lobby felt worse. "Are you sure?" "Yeah, come on. You need real coffee anyway. The vending machine stuff is toxic." They bundled into their coats and stepped outside. The cold hit like a wall, stealing breath. The snow was knee-deep in places. They walked slowly, deliberately, Reid breaking trail and Audrey following. The city was eerily quiet. A few people were out digging cars from drifts, but mostly it was empty, peaceful, post-apocalyptic. "When I was at my lowest," Reid said as they walked, "I used to imagine what it would feel like to just disappear. Drive somewhere no one knew me. Start over completely. New name. New life. Why didn't you? Because Finn deserved better than a father who ran away. And because I realized I wasn't trying to escape my circumstances. I was trying to escape myself. That doesn't work. Wherever you go, you bring yourself with you. They turned a corner. A small apartment building came into view. Old brick, 3 stories, iron fire escapes. Reid led her to the side entrance and up 2 flights of stairs. The hallway smelled like coffee and something baking. He knocked on a door marked C. A woman in scrubs answered. Late 50s, kind eyes, tired smile. Right on time, she said. He's been asking for you. A small boy appeared behind her, dark hair sticking up, wearing dinosaur pajamas. He launched himself at Reid's legs. Daddy! Reid scooped him up, and Audrey watched his entire being transform. The careful janitor, the analytical engineer, the wounded widower, all of it melted away, leaving just a father who had been away from his son too long. Hey, buddy, you have a good night? We made pancakes, and Miss Rose read 3 books. 3 whole books. That's a lot. Finn noticed Audrey for the first time. Who's that? This is my friend Audrey. She's had a hard night. We're going to have some coffee and talk. Can you play trains for a bit? Finn considered this seriously, then nodded. Okay, but can we go to the park after? The snow looks really good. We'll see. Let's get inside first. They thanked Rose and entered Reid's apartment. It was small. 1 bedroom, living room, kitchenette. But it was warm, clean, organized. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. A basket of toys sat in the corner. Books were stacked on every surface. Finn settled on the floor with a wooden train set. Reid made coffee in a French press, the ritual slow and deliberate. He handed Audrey a mug. It's not fancy, he said. It's perfect. They sat at a small table by the window. From here, Audrey could see the neighborhood. Working class, diverse, alive. People were emerging now, helping each other dig out, sharing shovels. It was so different from her sterile high-rise where she had lived for years and never learned her neighbors' names. I don't know how to do this, Audrey said quietly so Finn wouldn't hear. Do what? Survive without the structure, without the title and the company, and the identity I built. I feel like I'm falling and I don't know where the bottom is. Reid sipped his coffee. The bottom is wherever you decide to stop. For me, it was the day Finn smiled at me in that parking garage. I realized I could either keep falling or plant my feet. So I planted them. And if I can't find solid ground, then you build it. One decision at a time. You've already started. You investigated. You reached out to a journalist. You're fighting back. That's not falling. That's climbing. Finn brought over a train. Can you fix this? The wheel is stuck. Reid took the train and examined it with the same focus he had applied to the corporate structure investigation. He found the issue, a piece of dust caught in the axle, and cleaned it out. The wheel spun freely. There you go, good as new. Thanks, Daddy. Finn zoomed the train across the floor, making engine sounds. Audrey watched the exchange and felt something shift inside her. For years, she had measured success in valuations and market share and revenue growth. But this, a father fixing a toy for his son while morning light streamed through the window, this was success too. Different, quieter, but no less real. Her phone buzzed. Sarah Brennan, documents verified. Story runs tomorrow morning. Front page. Brace yourself. Audrey showed Reid the message. You did it, he said. We did it. I couldn't have pieced this together without you. So what happens now? I don't know. The story might change everything or nothing, but at least the truth is out there. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee, watching Finn play. Outside, the neighborhood was coming back to life, people reclaiming their city from the storm. Audrey realized she was warmer than she had been in hours, not because of the apartment's heat, but because of the presence of people who saw her as human, not as a scandal or a stock price. "Thank you," she said to Reid, "for last night, for this, for not looking away." "We don't look away in this neighborhood," he replied. "We show up for each other. That's how we survive." Audrey stayed until Finn's daycare opened. She helped Reid get the boy dressed, watched him pack a lunch of string cheese and crackers and apple slices, observed the morning routine of a single father. It was choreographed chaos. Shoes on, coat zipped, backpack checked. But there was love in every gesture. "Can Audrey come to the park later?" Finn asked as they prepared to leave. Reid looked at her. "That's up to Audrey. She has some important things to do today." Audrey knelt down to Finn's level. "Maybe another time, but thank you for sharing your trains with me." Finn hugged her spontaneously, the 3-year-old's enthusiastic embrace. Audrey froze for a second, then hugged him back. When had someone last hugged her without wanting something? After they left for daycare, Audrey sat alone in the apartment. She should go home, face whatever was waiting there. But she wasn't ready yet. Instead, she opened her laptop. Reid had told her his Wi-Fi password, and she started working. First, she drafted a statement for Sarah's article. Clear, factual, unemotional. She outlined the fraud, the coordinated attack, the evidence. She didn't play victim, didn't ask for sympathy. She just laid out the facts. Then she started making a list. What came next? She couldn't run Kane Technologies anymore. Even if the article cleared her name, that ship had sailed. But she had skills, experience, knowledge. She could build something new, smaller maybe, but hers. Later, her phone rang, her attorney, finally getting through. "Audrey, where the hell have you been? I've been trying to reach you all night." "I was busy." "What's the status?" "The SEC is expanding their investigation based on new information. Someone leaked documents about coordinated trading activity. Do you know anything about that?" Audrey smiled. "I might have shared some files with a journalist." Jesus Christ, Audrey. That could be seen as obstruction, or it could be seen as whistleblowing. Depends on what the documents show. Her attorney was silent for a moment. "What are we dealing with here? Corporate conspiracy, stock manipulation, coordinated fraud by board members and executives. It's all going to come out tomorrow. You should have consulted with me before. I should have done a lot of things differently. But I'm done asking permission. I'm going on offense." She hung up before he could argue. Her phone rang again immediately, a number she didn't recognize. She answered. "Miss Kane, this is Detective Raymond Park with the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. We'd like to speak with you about some documents that came to our attention this morning. Would you be willing to come in for an interview?" Audrey's heart raced. "Am I under arrest?" "No, ma'am. We're just gathering information. But if you have evidence relevant to our investigation, we'd like to hear from you directly." "I'll come in, but I want immunity for cooperation. I can't promise that right now, but if what you're saying is true, we'll work with you." They scheduled a meeting for that afternoon. Audrey hung up and sat back, processing. The FBI was involved now. This had escalated beyond a corporate scandal. People were going to face criminal charges, possibly including her, if they decided she had been complicit, even unknowingly. But she had the truth, and for the first time in her career, she was willing to bet everything on the truth being enough. She borrowed a coat from Reid's closet. He told her to take whatever she needed. and ventured back outside. The walk to her apartment took time through snow-clogged streets. By the time she arrived, she was exhausted, freezing, and more determined than she had ever been. Her apartment looked exactly as she had left it. Spotless, expensive, empty. She packed a bag with clothes and documents, grabbed her backup hard drives, and left. She couldn't stay here. Too many ghosts. Too much of the person she used to be. Instead, she checked into a small hotel blocks from Reid's apartment. Nothing fancy. Clean room, functional Wi-Fi, coffee maker. It cost little. A fraction of what she used to spend without thinking, but it felt right. Appropriate for who she was becoming. She spent the afternoon with the FBI, walking them through everything she had discovered. They recorded her statement, copied her files, asked detailed questions. Detective Park was sharp, thorough, skeptical of everyone. Audrey appreciated that. "If this checks out," he said at the end, "you might have just handed us the biggest corporate fraud case in Illinois in a decade. But I need to be clear. You're not off the hook yet. We'll need to verify your claims independently." "I understand. I'll cooperate fully." That evening, back at the hotel, Audrey's phone exploded with calls. Her story was leaking ahead of the official publication. Business networks were picking it up. Social media was lighting up. The narrative was shifting from disgraced CEO to CEO. Whistleblower exposes board conspiracy. One call stood out. A venture capitalist she had met years ago, someone who had passed on investing in her company initially. "Audrey, I just heard. I'm sorry I didn't reach out sooner. I should have known something was off." "It's fine. I didn't know either. Listen, I know you're in the middle of a storm, but when the dust settles, if you want to build something new, call me. Whatever you create next, I want in." Audrey was surprised to find that the offer didn't excite her. A week ago it would have validated everything. Now it just felt like noise. "I appreciate that. Let me get through the investigation first." She hung up and looked out the hotel window. The city was glowing in the twilight, lights reflecting off the snow. Somewhere out there, Reid was probably making dinner for Finn, reading bedtime stories, being present for the small moments that mattered. Audrey realized she had spent years chasing big moments. Product launches, funding rounds, acquisition deals. She had missed the small moments entirely, and those were the ones that actually built a life. She picked up her phone and sent a text to Reid. "Thank you for last night, for showing me what solid ground looks like. I'm going to build something on it." His response came a minute later. "You already are." The article ran days later. Front page above the fold, with a headline that made Audrey's chest tight. "Tech billionaire exposes corporate coup. How board members orchestrated a multi-billion-dollar theft." Sarah Brennan had done thorough work. She had verified every document, interviewed anonymous sources within Kane Technologies, traced the money flow from the hedge fund to the conspirators. The story was devastating. By noon, 3 board members had resigned. By evening, the SEC had frozen the stock purchase and launched a formal investigation into Douglas Lang and Lauren Hayes. Audrey watched it unfold from her hotel room, eating takeout Chinese food and fielding calls from attorneys, journalists, and former colleagues. Some apologized. Some asked for comment. Some just wanted to be on the right side of history now that the narrative had shifted. She ignored most of them. She had a different focus now. Weeks later, the criminal charges were filed. Douglas Lang, Lauren Hayes, Nathan Brooks, and 2 other board members were indicted on securities fraud, conspiracy, and wire fraud. The evidence was overwhelming. Emails, financial transfers, time-stamped access logs showing Lauren had used Audrey's credentials to authorize fraudulent trades. The trial would take months, maybe years, but the public vindication was immediate. Headlines now read, "Kane vindicated as board betrayal exposed." Audrey's frozen assets were released. Her reputation, while damaged, was being rebuilt. But Audrey didn't go back to Kane Technologies. The board offered. The investors begged. The employees petitioned. She declined everything. "I built that company once," she told a reporter who asked why. "I don't need to prove I can do it again. I need to prove I can build something different." What she built was smaller, a consulting firm that helped other companies identify internal fraud and structural vulnerabilities. She hired Reid as her first full-time engineer. He was reluctant. He had gotten comfortable with the janitor job, the predictable hours. But she convinced him. "You told me your skills don't disappear," she said. "Time to use them." They worked out of a shared office space in Reid's neighborhood. Finn would come by after daycare, sometimes doing homework at a corner desk while Audrey and Reid analyzed corporate structures for clients. It wasn't glamorous. The revenue was a fraction of what Audrey used to manage. But it was real. It was hers. It was built on truth. Months after the snowstorm, Audrey sold her high-rise apartment and bought a 3-bedroom townhouse blocks from Reid's place. She learned her neighbors' names. She helped shovel sidewalks after storms. She started showing up to things, block parties, school fundraisers, community meetings. One Saturday morning, she met Reid and Finn at the park, the same park Finn had wanted to visit the morning after the storm. It was spring now. Snow long melted, flowers blooming in the beds along the path. Finn ran ahead to the playground. Audrey and Reid walked slowly, coffee in hand, watching him play. "You ever regret it?" Reid asked. "Giving up the empire?" Audrey thought about it. "No, I regret building something that could be stolen that easily. But I don't regret losing it. Turns out I needed to lose it to find this." She gestured around. The park, the neighborhood, the ordinary Saturday morning. A life that's actually mine. Not a performance, not a brand. Just real. Reid nodded. "Finn asked me yesterday when you're coming over for dinner again. He wants to show you his new train set. Tell him tomorrow. I'll bring dessert." They sat on a bench watching Finn navigate the jungle gym with the careful concentration of a 3-year-old testing his limits. Audrey felt the sun on her face, warm after the long winter. She thought about that night in the lobby, falling on ice, being caught by a man who had every reason to ignore her, but chose to help instead. "Can I ask you something?" Audrey said. "Sure." "That night in the lobby, why did you really help me? You said it was paying forward what someone did for you, but there's more to it, isn't there?" Reid smiled slightly. "You want the real answer?" "Always. I helped you because I saw someone who'd forgotten they were human. You were so wrapped up in being a CEO, being a billionaire, being this public figure, you'd lost track of the person underneath. And I know what that's like. After Sarah died, I got so consumed by grief and logistics and survival that I forgot I was still Reid. Not just a widower, not just a father. Still me." He looked at her. "I thought maybe if I could remind you that you were still Audrey, you'd remember how to save yourself." Audrey felt tears prick her eyes. "I think it worked." "Yeah, I think it did." Finn ran over, demanding they come see how high he could swing. They followed him, laughing, and Audrey pushed him on the swing, while Reid spotted him on the climbing wall. It was so ordinary, so small, so perfect. That evening, back at her townhouse, Audrey opened her laptop. She had been working on something for weeks, a framework for identifying corporate fraud early, before it metastasized. She would be presenting it at a conference next month, not as a disgraced CEO making a comeback. Just as Audrey Kane, consultant, survivor, human. Her phone buzzed. A text from Reid. Finn wants pancakes tomorrow. You in? She smiled and typed back, I'm in. Outside her window, the neighborhood was settling into evening. Lights coming on in the windows. People coming home. Dogs being walked. Kids being called in for dinner. The rhythm of ordinary life that Audrey had spent years missing while she chased extraordinary success. She had learned something in that snowstorm, in that lobby, in the worst night of her professional life. Success isn't never falling. It's rising when the world thinks you're finished. It's knowing the difference between empire and foundation. It's understanding that the people who catch you when you slip on ice are worth more than the ones who only knew you at the top. Winter doesn't last forever, but the lessons you learn in the coldest nights, those stay with you. Those build you. Those become the foundation for everything that comes after. Audrey closed her laptop and looked around her small townhouse. No marble lobby, no glass tower, no empire, just a home, just a life, just enough. And for the first time in years, that felt like everything.